Ralph Breaks the Internet takes the 2012 original's quirky sense of humor and take on retro video games and applies it to the internet. So let's talk about it. Since the last film, Ralph and Vanellope have become best friends, but when her game is damaged, they must go into the internet in hopes of finding a way to save her game. Real quick before I give you my take on the movie, don't take the film's advice on the comment section. Go ahead and join us down in there. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did it disappoint you? I'd love to have a nice lively discussion with you about this film. Also, if you enjoy this hoodie that I'm wearing, or many of the other t-shirts I wear in my videos, there's a huge Black Friday sale in my merch store this week, 30% off of everything, and that means $14 t-shirts. The link for my merch store is down below in the description, and with that said, let's get started talking about the good. And the absolute best thing about this movie is that our two lead characters are so fun and charming. It's just great to watch Ralph and Vanellope interact back and forth on their different adventures with their different insecurities, the arcs that they go on. It's just fun to watch them on screen together. Along those same lines, the movie is very funny. It just kind of goes for it when it comes to humor. There's a very large entertainment value in this film. The dialogue, the physical humor, the situations, there's just a lot of amusing things that happen. Along those same lines, it's just a fun world and environment to be in. Watching it with my son, the whole movie, I kept nudging him, being like, did you see that over there? Did you see that over there? And then he pointed things, hey Dad, did you see that over there? It's a fun world to be in and to play in with an adventure like this. And of course, the huge thing with that is the cameos. Being that this movie's very internet based, as soon as they go into the internet, there's all of these little subtle jokes and moments that kind of poke fun at the world of the internet or the actual character cameos. Obviously, the original film had tons of these retro cameos. This film dives into an internet world, and so it goes in a different direction. And part of that is that they get to go to the Disney website, and that is just packed with fun. There's characters that you see in the trailer, and there's even several that they've held back from them as well, that it just makes for some really fun little moments. And of course, the star of the cameos in this one would be the Disney princesses. They prominently showed that inside the trailers, and it really is a great sequence. There's a couple of different times where they show up, and they're not like a major part of the film, but they are a standout part of the film, and it's a prominent enough that you really get some good laughs out of it, and they set some things up really nicely. Another thing I enjoyed about the film is the way they decided to visualize the internet. Obviously, in the first film, they visualized these video game characters interacting in a community inside of the power strip, and they take this similar sort of idea with Wi-Fi and the internet out there. And there's just some cool ways it's visualized, the way they kind of demonstrate it on screen. I had a lot of fun with that. Also, in regards to Vanellope's story arc, there's a sequence with her that I was not expecting, that they went to a place that I thought was just fantastic and a ton of fun. If you've seen the movie, you almost certainly know what I'm talking about. And finally, the movie's mid-credit scene is actually a really clever way to poke fun at audience expectation and knowledge in the era of the internet. With that said, let's move on to the mixed aspects of this film. And the big thing here is that it's different. It takes that tone and those lead characters and that sense of humor that was applied to retro video games in the first film, and it transfers it over to the world of the internet. And in a lot of ways, it feels very similar, but it also abandons kind of one of the big hooks of the original film, which was that kind of retro video game setting that everything took place in. Now, certainly it can be a very good thing for movies to go off in a different direction, but when you go off in a different direction, naturally some audience members will feel like they lost the thing that they loved about the original. Also with this film, because it goes in a different direction, most of all of the side characters from the first film are kind of bookends in the film. They're there at the beginning and then they're there at the end, but the whole adventure off inside of the internet, they're back in the power strip, whereas our two leads are on the internet. With that said, let's move on to the bad. And the first thing that comes to mind here is that when you have a movie that so much of the humor and plot of the film is tied to current internet trends, it can feel dated right out of the gate. There's a number of jokes in this film that I thought, ooh, that feels a little bit too late. And especially the title, when they announced it 2 years ago, I thought that title was dated then. But the big problem here is that I wasn't really a fan of the story and how it played out. I thought the basic setup for the film was pretty good. This idea that her video game is broken, they need to go into the internet to fix it. That's a nice setup for a film that provides plenty of opportunity for lots of internet gags, setups, and cameos that are a lot of fun. The way it played out though, I didn't particularly like it. For about the first half of the film, I was thinking to myself, I might like this more than the original Wreck-It Ralph, but when it really started to dig deep into how they were actually making money, it just didn't feel quite right to me. It felt a little bit cheap and easy. And then the way the story played out at about 60% of the movie really didn't work for me. In most films, you have what's considered the outer story and the inner story. The outer story is the main conflict. In this film, it would be the setup that I described at the beginning about trying to rescue Vanellope's video game. In the inner story, that's where you have the character arcs, the themes, the lessons that our characters are learning. And in most films, as our lead characters are trying to resolve the outer conflict, they are transformed as part of that inner conflict, and those two stories sort of resolved in the climax of the film at the same time. Here it felt to me like the main outer storyline was resolved about 75% of the way through the story, and then they morphed the inner conflict into a literal second main conflict inside of the film, and it turns into the main outer conflict as you go into the climax of the film. And it just struck me as a very strange way to design the story. It gets very rushed towards the end where Ralph makes a certain decision and when he learns some information, and it just kind of goes off in a very different direction that I didn't feel like was set up particularly well earlier in the film, and it just didn't play out in a way that I enjoyed all that much. I feel like either one of these storylines, if they'd taken that where they went in the last 25% of the movie and really had made that the whole film, I think that could have worked. I also think that what they did with the main body of this storyline about the broken video game works pretty well as a main plotline as well, though they went for a little bit of low-hanging fruit at times. But the mix of the two felt off to me, and I was not a fan of the main villain in the climax of this film and where they kind of went with that. That was not something that I enjoyed all that much. So this one's tough for me to score because there's a ton of entertainment value here, but for me, I felt like the movie got worse as it went along, unfortunately. But real quick, before I give you my final score on this one, remember to tell me what you thought about it down below in the comments section. Also, after this video, check out this playlist above with my Disney and Pixar rankings. If you enjoyed this video, there's something in there that you will probably enjoy. Also, remember there's a sale in my merch store this weekend. All things considered, there's just enough positive entertainment value for me to recommend this film, but I'm only gonna go with a B- and a 7 out of 10 on this one. Remember to check out that playlist to the left with my best Pixar and Disney rankings. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.